Hey, Talkhouse listeners, it's Josh Modell. In place of a Talkhouse episode this week, I want to introduce you to a great new show in our network called All One Song, a Neil Young podcast. Presented by our friends over at Aquarium Drunkard and hosted by Tyler Wilcox, All One Song will dive deep into, you guessed it, one Neil Young song per episode. On this first installment, Tyler welcomes Steve Gunn for a chat about a pretty obscure but fantastic Young song, 1977's Will to Love. Guests in future weeks include Steve Shelley, Rosalie, and Jeff Parker, plus plenty more. Check out the first episode right here, and then subscribe and follow if and when you love it.
Hello there. Welcome to the very first episode of All One Song, a Neil Young podcast presented by Aquarium Drunkard Transmissions. I'm Tyler Wilcox, a longtime Aquarium Drunkard contributor and Neil Young fanatic. For the next several weeks, I'll be chatting with an array of great musicians and writers about their favorite Neil Young song, diving deep into Shakey lore, getting personal about this amazing body of work. It's a series for Neil heads by Neil heads. A little context for the title of our podcast, All One Song. At the outset of 1997's live album, Year of the Horse, Neil mocks a heckler. They all sound the same, he hollers. It's all one song. That's not a bad summing up of Young's 60-plus year career in music. Not that Neil hasn't zigged and zagged stylistically many times over the years, to both the delight and frustration of his fans. But almost every one of his songs from 1965 to 2025 is infused with his absolutely singular personality. As we go through his various compositions, we'll find that this one song contains multitudes. It's all one song, but it's a complicated song. Our first guest on All One Song should need no introduction for longtime Aquarium Drunkard readers, but I'll give him one anyway. For the past 15 years or so, Steve Gunn has built up one of the strongest, most wide-ranging catalogs in independent music. He's released classic albums on such labels as Three Lobed, Paradise of Bachelors, Matador, and more. Steve is a singer-songwriter guitarist triple threat with a powerful sense of adventure and imagination. He's always worth paying attention to, whether he's collaborating with drummer John Trzynski and the Gunn-Trzynski duo, creating beautiful soundscapes with David Moore, or playing all on his own. Steve's latest album, Music for Writers, falls into the latter category. Coming out on August 15th on Three Lobed, this is his first completely solo instrumental record. He played all the instruments, building luminous, hypnotic pieces that encourage the listener to slow down and really listen. The songs here aren't just ambient background sounds, they're sonic meditations that take you to some other place. The solo aspect of Music for Writers dovetails nicely with the Neil Young song that Steve chose for us to discuss, Will to Love. Now this is a unique one in Neil's catalog and a song that's prized by die-hard Shakey fans. Accompanied only by a crackling fire and an acoustic guitar, Neil recorded the basic track at his ranch in the spring of 1976, somewhere in between his European tour with Crazy Horse and the ill-fated Stills Young Band trip that summer. Then he put it aside for a few months, only returning to it in December of '76, when he went into Indigo Studios in Malibu to overdub vocals, keyboards, guitars, drums, even vibes, all aided and abetted by producer David Briggs. Now, by the time it was released on American Stars and Bars in 1977, Will to Love was a ghostly 7-minute piece of music that's unlike almost anything else Neil had done before or anything he's done since. You could spend your life plumbing the depths of Will to Love and never quite get to the bottom of it. It's a grand statement on desire, longing, heartbreak, and beyond. And a lot of it is sung from the point of view of a fish. As Steve and I discuss, the solitary nature of Will to Love fits in nicely with his new one, Music for Writers. There's a cosmic loneliness at work here, but also a joyous feeling of exploration and freedom. So, without further ado, here's Steve Gunn on All One Song. All right. Steve Gunn, welcome to All One Song, a Neil Young podcast. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. So before we jump into the song you've chosen, we just kind of wanted to know your Neil Young origin story. Is he somebody that you've always loved from an early age? Is he somebody that you've sort of discovered later on? What's the background there?
I think it was a little later, and I kind of grew up. I didn't get into him until I was basically in college. I was sort of into skate punk and different kinds of like hardcore music and making my way through songwriting. My dad, my mom, of course, liked the Beatles, and my dad liked Dylan. But I didn't really latch on to Neil until I was kind of seriously playing guitar and then living on my own. I moved out of my parents' house when I was pretty young, and I had a job and was living in a house full of people. So I think Neil Young really settled in with me when I was like maybe 20 or 21.
Yeah.
That's when it really kind of hit me.
Yeah.
And I was aware of him, of course, but I come from an age where like his older records weren't necessarily like prevalent in my sphere just yet. And as I became more of a deeper record appreciator, then I was like, I started, I found Zoom, and I found like the On the Beach and those records. Oh, and then that's when I completely got kind of obsessed with it.
Right. Yeah. No, he is sort of the perfect, especially back in the day when maybe you started, at least for me, when you started getting into buying used records, he was such an easy person to, build up his discography. His records were cheap back then. I mean, they're still relatively cheap probably, but you could go and find all that stuff and realize that there was this sort of deeper thing behind, the more pop Neil Young thing, that maybe the more people knew of, that you'd be like, oh, there's like this weird record called On the Beach or Time Fades Away or something that maybe even back then wasn't even on CD or something. You'd be like, I gotta buy it here.
It's funny to think about because when I was younger, I was into underground music. In the beginning, I was into buying zines and ordering records through the mail. And then, I started going to record stores and finding more obscure. It's funny how like hyper obscure I was when I was young, and then, no pun intended, young, but when I was like discovering stuff and I was like sifting through like things that were way under people's radar, and then I came to discover the artistry of Neil Young. I mean, I was more like, to me, in my mind, because of when I grew up watching MTV. And kind of, I was sort of around in the grunge era. So I was more like, he was a bit of a grandfather, kind of rocked in the free world person. So I didn't necessarily latch onto that. But then, just a little bit later, when things started getting reissued, is when it completely got a hold of me.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, I mean, out of, the whole catalog of, tons and tons of Neil Young songs, you selected Will to Love, a song that came out in 1977 on American Stars and Bars. And is this, 7+ minute kind of dreamscape situation. What made this one stand out for you? Why did you pick this song to talk about?
I think because of you can sense that it's like so personal, and it's like it has this kind of raw, emotional quality that most of the other record doesn't have.
Yeah.
And to me, I always found that special, but also to learn more about it a little later, and the fact that it was kind of pieced together, and then there was a lot of overdub happening, and it wasn't necessarily intended for a release, and it was pretty much like an improvisational kind of thing where Neil was just sort of channeling this story that he came up with, and he adopted this voice of a fish. And to learn, to learn that he was, on his ranch of Broken Arrow and sort of just by himself. And yeah, I already kind of felt that it was more lo-fi than the album. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of has this really intimate, sort of haunting feeling to it. But I was drawn to it.
Yeah.
To sort of be a deeper appreciator of him and to kind of know the story of it a little more, it's even more meaningful.
But yeah, I mean, as you say, I mean, it is this sort of strange world that you're into. I mean, you hear that the fire crackling behind him, if you put on headphones, you have all this sort of stuff, especially in that. I mean, I sent over that version that is sort of the unoverdubbed version that has sort of a strange like monologue at the beginning, and you really get this sense of just complete I don't know, loneliness or aloneness, maybe not loneliness necessarily, but it's a very like intense you're definitely eavesdropping on a person kind of going through something.
Yeah, it has this fragility to it that some of the other album doesn't have, but it's, to me, that's Neil at his best, when he's like, I mean, I love all versions of him. I love his guitar playing, but I think some of the more intimate stuff that he's doing, where he's kind of channeling something and when it's haunting, it's just super powerful when he gets into that state.
Yeah. Well, it is just interesting that it's something that he isn't quite, I mean, the song in particular, he obviously has never played it live again. He maybe never sang it again. He did all, it's a very, one time only situation. I mean, I was trying to think of other songs of his that he has, there are probably songs that he hasn't really revisited, but this one in particular, he seems to hold in a pretty high esteem, but he doesn't want to touch it. He's kind of like that happened, and I don't think I could do it again. So I don't know. I mean, it is interesting, and it's also interesting that he recorded it in I think the spring of '76 in that sort of solo demo mode on his ranch, and then put it away for 6 or 7 months or something, and then went back to it and had this sort of more heavily produced. I don't know. I mean, What do you think about the production on this record? He obviously is overdubbing all these different things. There's the watery effects. There's a band that sort of floats in. It's really, it's super unique for him and for almost anybody. I don't know.
It's interesting to hear this other version, the more raw version, and then hear the overdubs, because I just associate my learning the song with the reverbs and delays, and there's even the vibes on it.
Yeah.
And
there's double tracking of the vocals.
And it just feels very kind of submerged, and I think it's cool. I mean, I really like that. I mean, I really was moved by this version that I heard that you sent to me. I never heard that before, so
no.
I mean, I love the song so much. So to hear that and to actually hear what was, he kind of does this little ramble in the beginning and explains the situation he's in,
right?
And then it's just clear that he's just channeling something. But the overdubs, it's there's a lot of subtlety, and they treated it well, and it feels like it's very Jane-like, and it's very like he's working with this theme of water, and it feels like it's submerged, and it kind of has this close listen. And to me, it's it's intimate, and it has this sort of haunting thing as well. And to mix that with the fact that he was just by a fire and had a tape like rolling, that's very rare. I think with Neil stuff, it reminds me of the bootlegs, a lot of the bootlegs that I really like, and the sort of the immediacy of his like delivery, and just to kind of feel him channeling what he has going on. I think to me that's such a powerful state to be in as a musician, and the way that he just can channel like a feeling and this vulnerability that he just kind of like puts forth, particularly in that setting, I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of a lot of the bootlegs that I like really listen to closely and really like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's sort of like, it's an interesting way to, sort of, yeah, just, I guess the approach for him, he's someone who's so much in the moment and so much in the, he relies on his collaborators, he relies on other people to sort of bring him a certain energy. But in this case, it was sort of like he was able to bring it all himself in different settings. I mean, he obviously recorded the first, the original version of it up in Northern California, and then he was down in Malibu recording at Indigo Studios with David Briggs later on. But yeah, there's still that feeling of spontaneity and intimacy, even to the overdubs. It's not as though he's like trying to fix anything about the song. It's more that it's like he's trying to give it more life or something. I don't know. Illustrate it better or something. But yeah, no, that version is really fascinating.
Did Briggs kind of like pressure him into doing the overdubs and making this an actual song? Because wasn't it was supposed to be for another? Wasn't it supposed to be for like Chrome Dreams, and then that time that record never really came out. There was some sort of thing that happened where that came out later, but
yeah,
it wasn't intended for, because Stars and Bars it's more of like a straight up kind of bar room.
Yeah.
Rock.
Yeah. I mean, the first side of it is completely just sort of like these sort of very kind of rowdy tunes. And the second side turns into, I guess that's I don't know. Yeah. American Stars and Bars, which, I guess it's two sides of something. It's the star side. But
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure exactly, but I think that he did just sort of have this song. There's even a story of him taking it to CSNY to be like, maybe we could do this song. And to imagine that, you're like, well, thank God maybe that didn't happen. They might have just sort of, but I think that everybody who heard the song was kind of like, no, I mean, you should keep it the way it is. And maybe Briggs was like, well, let's make this into something that's not just, this very spare thing, but maybe we can figure out a way to turn it into more, I don't know. Yeah, really lock into that dream state that comes across in it. But yeah, I mean, so you've got a new record coming out called Music for Writers. It's an entirely solo effort, which, obviously this is, Neil's a rare version of Neil kind of doing this, overdubby kind of thing. He did that on his first record to some extent. He did it a little bit after this on the record that just came out as sort of a lost record called Oceanside Countryside, where he was sort of doing his own overdubs, but this is sort of unique. But I just wanted to ask you, like what are the advantages for you in working like this, where it's just you, other than the obvious, where you don't have somebody else telling you that, you should do this or that? What do you like about it?
Yeah. I think it's just so intensely personal. This last record that I made, I was intending to not just kind of have it be wordless and to be sort of just channeling like a lot of things that I was experiencing. And I did a couple residencies in Europe, and I was doing a lot of reflecting and improvising. Also, I kind of had just a sort of very minimal setup, and I was on the move, and it felt like I was documenting this personal journey that I was going on. I know that sounds cliche.
No, I mean, it makes sense.
To me, it was it was very open. Like the whole project was completely open, and I wasn't intending. I had no clear intention of like making a record. When I've made albums, like I write songs, and I'm working on that too. But I've always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to make a solo instrumental record. And I felt like, there's a lot of things that I just don't want to use lyrics and words to express. And a lot of these expressions were my own experience with my travels and where I was, and it feels very personal.
Yeah.
And I don't felt I feel like what particularly with this song, he's just, it's almost as if you can, what's amazing to me about this song is like you can kind of feel some of Neil's songs. It's really like this, it's almost like an embrace, and he kind of really rides this vulnerability and the sense of love, but also this sense of fear. And I feel like this is just a common sort of like, it's a common experience between all of us, and he captures that so amazing. And when to listen to that song and to feel him just being alone, and even just to have these like sound bites of a fire, and know that it's almost as if you can kind of feel him there and sense what he's going through.
Yeah.
And I think that for this, obviously I'm not comparing what I did to what he did, but I find a lot of inspiration in that. And I too was just kind of like trying to channel a feeling, and I wasn't ready to contextualize it with language, but I was in all these places and I was really deeply reflecting. And to me, I mean, I've always wanted to make a record like that, and that, and it was in it. I did find a lot of inspiration from people who dedicate their time to writing and to conjuring up imagery and ideas, and I felt like maybe it's time for me to not speak and just try to work in this dreamlike, productive way. And I'm hoping that kind of, and people can kind of sense that.
just listening to it today, it felt like such a, I think intimate is, and vulnerable is a good word for it too. I feel like your record does have that element where it doesn't feel super, it just has a certain quality to it that comes across really nicely. And I knew that we were going to be talking about the song, so I was just kind of like, well, it does sort of. Obviously it was in my head, but I was like, it sort of makes sense in that regard. So I don't know. I mean,
I had never thought about it. I never thought about it with this song particularly, but it does make sense because, a lot of the stuff that I was recording, I basically had a mobile rig. So I went to Latvia for a month, for example, and I did this residency, and I was doing a lot of hiking, and I just kind of had a couple of mics set up. So I was, I just was playing, and I was just improvising when I would come back, and I would keep things and toss them away. And then I came back home to New York, and I just sort of helped my friend help me mix stuff, and then that's when I was, I did a little bit of overdubbing, but not a lot. Some of the stuff I was doing while I was there, I just had some little gear. I wasn't in a studio or anything. So it's interesting to think about this song and to think about what I was doing. Hopefully we're kind of channeling a similar sort of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like emotional connection with people. To me, I feel like sometimes that kind of music is really speaks to me,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that I find impressive about this song, and maybe just the era that it was recorded in for Neil, is, we're talking about this vulnerability, but also that he is somebody who was, basically at the height of his fame, probably at this point in his, in his career and his life. But he was, and compared to his peers, maybe some of the other people in, his circle, he was still able to connect to that in a way that I don't know if other people, even someone like Bob Dylan, I don't really think that he at that point was able to get into that headspace. He sort of maybe felt the weight of expectations, but this feels like without any weight of expectation. Will to Love feels very, as we've been saying, just it's incredibly personal, incredibly without concern for what it'll come across as. It just feels kind of pure in that way. And it's just, I feel like it's impressive that he was able to.
I also feel like it's like channeling. He's kind of channeling this almost like he's like dealing with a fear. Like he has a lot of love songs, and they're more they're declarative, and he knows what he's saying, and he knows how to explain it. But I feel like there's like he's grappling with something with this song. There's like this kind of destructive quality to it, and it's like he's kind of putting himself out there. And I feel like maybe he wasn't, there's just a rawness to that like connection, and it's almost like a struggle, like he's like struggling with something.
Yeah.
And there's like this, he's like really, he's adopting this voice of this salmon, and it's like, it's like a painful kind of like, it's this really, like, I think he has this really, one of his like amazing abilities. He's like, he takes the mundane and he kind of makes, like, he's not like a overly hype, like he's not a mythic. He's mythic, but he's mundane, which
right.
That's like such a hard thing to do, to be like overly, like where you're standing on this platform and you're like declaring this love for something, and then he's mixing in he's like heartbroken. I feel like there's a level of heartbreak through a lot of his music, and there's also with this song, there's this element of nature to it, and I just felt like it's just a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think that it's something as far as the lyrics go. Yeah, I think you're latching on to like the pain behind it that is, yeah, I mean, I think insecurity and just sort of this element of being unable to get away from yourself in some way, but still having that desire, having that sort of maybe belief in yourself. I mean, obviously this will to love, he's like, I'm never gonna lose it. So he feels it, but yeah, in this moment, it's sort of one of these things where, yeah, the chorus of it, I guess you'd call it, does feel like this kind of mantra that that he maybe is increasingly trying to tell himself that things are going to. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's like it has this element of transition, transformation, something like that, or willing a transformation to happen, maybe. So I don't know. But yeah, I wanted to ask you about, I mean, you're somebody who is, I think of as, an incredible acoustic guitar player, but also an incredible electric guitar player. Just sort of generally, yeah, Neil as a guitar player, what do you get from him? What do you like about him? What do you think stands out?
He's so distinctive, and it's him. I really love his acoustic playing, of course, and I think his electric playing, it's just a voice. And to me, that kind of playing, when you hear a voice, when you know it's someone, is the most distinctive. And it's always something that my ear sort of leans to. And I always find it the most inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like when he plays a lead, it's like he's playing in his own voice. And there aren't a lot of players who I can think of at the moment who really have that. I mean, of course, you can name a list, but I think of, for some reason, I'm thinking of Sonny Chirac,
right?
Where when you listen to when you hear his playing, and you hear his sonic projection, it's him. And I don't want to get overly obscure,
right?
And be sort of get on some sort of nerdery with that, or exclusivity with explaining music. But Sonny Chirac's playing, I think particularly when he he's a composer, but when he starts projecting sound, it's him, and there's a tonality to it. And I think with Neil, he kind of has a similar cluster. There's like this it's a sonic projection.
Yeah.
And to me, that always, I've seen him over a span of a lot of years, and it's so cool that he has that ear as well as this delicate form of songwriting.
Yeah.
It's just so like, he's such an individual.
Yeah, it's a life force. It's like a very strong, strong thing. Yeah. And I think that, yeah, I mean, someone like Sonny Chirac, or I mean, I think of, and obviously these are all pretty different players, but someone like Tom Verlaine, it's like, yeah, just that voice that is being projected out. That's very, yeah, as you say, distinctive and intense. And yeah, I mean, even on this song, it's not like this is as far from being a shredding song as you could possibly get, but there is, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's something in his hands that comes across in a very expressive fashion. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's one of the mysteries of his music where it's like, well, why is that so good? So, you know, it's something to figure out or to just sort of ponder. But yeah, it's
a lot of channeling.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he's not this overt technical player, and the songs are so simple. And I think it's his like real like his depth. I mean, he's a great writer, of course, and you know, to learn that he comes from a background of understanding writing, and his father was a journalist and all that stuff. Like, he has such a command of language, but he also has this real dream, this way of really like channeling a dream state. And I think that, you know, this song is a perfect example of it.
I was looking around and I was like, well, has somebody tried to cover Will to Love? Like, and I was just sort of digging around and I found a few things that were like, you know, YouTube attempts and everything, but it's obviously not something that's become a standard. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I know that you've done motion pictures in the past. Do you think that this song is uncoverable? Like, out of, you know...
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm trying to think. I think I probably was in some warehouse or basement where I've seen someone play this.
Really?
I can't recall. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But I can't remember exactly. But yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I always felt like I was like, no way. I can't touch that song.
Yeah, it does feel sort of weirdly untouchable.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah.
You'd have to really kind of, well, yeah, I don't know what, maybe you'd have to just reinvent it entirely or something.
Yeah.
But it does seem sort of in another realm, which is funny because yeah, it's like Neil Young as a songwriter. I mean, he's one of the greatest songwriters for that sort of thing where you can learn his songs pretty easily. It's not like they're incredibly complex. I mean, as a kid, that was like rocking in the free world. It was like, okay, like I think I can do this. But this song in particular, I was just like, no, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah. Maybe it's funny to know that he's never really played it either.
He hasn't covered it either.
And I'm like, oh, look, this entity that's like, okay, that's something that exists. People shouldn't mess with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is true. It's like, yeah, he can't even figure out a way to do it. So it's like no one else is going to be able to do it either. Yeah, that is.
Looks like a little capsule,
yeah.
A little.
Well, yeah, I mean, we mentioned that it's on American Stars and Bars from 1977, as like we sort of touched on. That is like a hodgepodge. I mean, I think the earliest song on that record is from maybe 1973 or 74, and goes all the way up to 77, which was sort of his mode at that time, was kind of like picking and choosing a bunch of songs because he just had so many good ones at the time.
Right.
What do you think about American Stars and Bars? I mean, the thing that I was like impressed with just listening to it today, I was like, well, I mean, Will to Love goes straight into Like a Hurricane, which is, you know, sort of the kind of you know, I mean, it's a dramatic kind of sequencing choice, I guess, and it works. But it was funny because I'd sort of forgotten that was it felt surprising when it kicked in.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that record. I listened to it a ton. It just has so many great songs on it. And it's always one that I went back to.
Yeah.
And it's varied enough. It's more of like, you know, a rockin', almost sort of more of a like it doesn't lean too heavy into the folk realm and the acoustic realm, but then it has this amazing song on it. So it's like an odd collection, but it's I mean I like it because it's that, you know, like it's a super unique, kind of often overlooked record.
Yeah, I think because it has those sorts of contradictory things in it, maybe people are kind of like, oh, well, I don't know how to get a handle on it, but it does. I mean, I always like that Neil Young has, you know, I mean, it's not just like full I'm a genius mode songwriting. It's like more, here's, you know, he can have a song. I mean, Hey Babe is on this record, you know, which is one of his most sort of simple and kind of straightforward songs. And then it has Will to Love and, I don't know, these sort of more enigmatic things. But you can, I don't know, it feels like a very sort of good representation of Neil Young's personality, maybe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Goes in all kinds of directions.
It is. And it's also like, it seems to be like it's one direction, and then the second side, it's like it almost seems like it starts veering off to different things.
Yeah.
Like it's like they were like, okay, he's sitting on so much music, so he's like, let's put Will to Love and like a Hurricane.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a really cool symmetry to it.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think the first side, wasn't it like recorded? The first side is like one session.
Yeah, it's with Crazy Horse and Linda Ronstadt and Nicolette Larson. So it's just like, yeah, these like 5 songs that maybe he was like, I just wrote these songs. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then that's such a cool. To me, it's almost like there's like this first session, and then there's a second side where there's all these amazing tracks. I wouldn't dare call them extra tracks, but it's another pastiche of what he does.
Yeah. I mean, it is just an amazing era for him in general, because even those songs that feel like they are maybe even these lesser tossed off songs, you're kind of like, well, he did it. You know, he got it. Like he was on a roll.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Even something like, I guess on there, it opens with the Old Country Waltz, and that song I think I did sort of think of as being like kind of a just sort of a version of a country song or something. But then, you know, I think at some point it hit me as a very like heavy song.
Yeah, I like that. Old Country Waltz. It's like you're just sort of easing into it.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it's a good opener, but it feels sort of Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, like, I mean, the sort of closing segment we have for the podcast is encounters with Neil. Just like if you have a memorable show, a memorable experience, any sort of. I mean, have you ever met Neil Young? I don't know.
Well, I said hello to him from a distance, and like I never was introduced to him, but I was like around him, and I just sort of like I saw him walking his dog, basically.
Nice.
And I had this crazy night. Do you want me to tell you the story?
Yeah, totally.
So I was in Brooklyn, and I had heard Bert Jansch came to town, and I saw him play in New York a few times, and there was a point where he was touring with Peggy Young,
right?
And he was playing at this place in Brooklyn, and I was gonna go. I'd seen him, taking any opportunity to see him. So
yeah,
I bought this ticket. It's a place called the Bell House, which is over kind of in Gowanus here in Brooklyn.
Right.
And so I had the ticket, and it was earlier that day, and a friend texted me and said, and at the time I was living in the same neighborhood, and they were like, yo, man, my friend was like, I just saw Neil Young walking down Court Street, which was like my, where it's like my neighborhood. And I was like, whoa, what? Like, apparently, I just, like, he was hanging out with Bert, and we were. So I later learned, because I was talking to my friend who was tour managing them at the time, and he told me that apparently Neil and Bert hadn't met before.
Right.
I could be wrong about that. That might be a detail that's not true, but that's what I heard.
Right.
And that they had met for dinner at this restaurant on Court Street.
That's crazy.
And and that they were just meeting for the first time.
That's wild.
So my friend told me that he saw him, and I was like, holy shit. So I knew he was in town.
Yeah.
And I knew that he would be obviously with Peggy at this show that Bert Jansch was opening, and Peggy was playing. And so I went to this gig, and I got there early, and I was there during, like, before the doors, I guess. And I noticed I just was standing in the venue, like, looking in, and there were people kind of setting up, and I was like, oh my God, that's Spooner Oldham.
Yeah, right.
The keyboards.
Nice.
It was just like, holy shit, and then I could see Neil, like, I saw him through the back of the venue, like backstage, and I was like, holy shit. And then Bert was there. So I was like, this is like,
yeah, there's too much in the building right now.
This is so crazy. And then Bert played his set. Yeah, and so Bert played his set, and I saw him play a couple days later, but it was the last time that I saw him perform. And then Peggy played, and then Neil came out. Of course, like, Neil came out and played with her and all this stuff. And I was like, just completely, like, floored.
Yeah.
Just to be in this room with these people. And show ended, and my friend who was tour managing Bert, I basically was like, do you think I could go say hi? I was like, yeah, totally, of course. I went in the back, and I saw Bert sitting there by himself, and I just went up and started talking to him, and he was so sweet to me. And I just said, like, of course, the same, whatever. I just was like grabbing whatever words and just being very thankful. And, and he's like, okay, cool. Great to meet you. And so I was like, I talked to him for like 5 minutes. He was so nice. And then I left the venue, and I said goodbye to a few friends, and I was out unlocking my bike. outside of the Bell House, and there was a tour bus just down the street that was parked for the show, and there were a couple of people, and it was Neil with his dog, and he was like with another guy and maybe a couple other people, and I just was like maybe 25, 30 feet away,
Yeah.
and I was like, yo, and I was like, Neil, and I just called his name. And he turned around and was like, hey, man. And I was like, thanks, man. Like, have a good night. And I just waved to him. And I got on my bike. And I just like rode home. And because I just met Bert too.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I just was like saying peace to Neil. And it was like pretty incredible, like 20 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Like meeting two of my heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, in Brooklyn on a Brooklyn street that they're just hanging out on. It's amazing. Well, that is an awesome story. I mean, that's a perfect, version of an Neil encounter, especially having Bert Jansch in there in the mix. I mean, that is incredible. Just knowing, I mean, it's so great that those two did hook up, at least for, I mean, I know that they toured together briefly, maybe it was 2010 or 2011, but like, what a great sort of cap to that, relationship, obviously from afar. Cause yeah, I don't think that they had met even, they hadn't met back in the 60s or 70s or anything, but maybe they met sometime, right around that point. And it is just good that those two shared the same space for a little bit, I
mean, I've seen Neil in concert. That's a whole nother experience as well.
Yeah. Did you catch them the last time they were around? Like I guess last summer when they were touring?
No, I was like traveling, so I didn't catch him that time, but I'm definitely planning on seeing him when he comes back.
He's coming back. I think he's with Spooner.
I've seen him over the year. Oh yeah. I'm definitely gonna see the
Spooner Oldham's in the band. Yeah. Do you have a more like most memorable time of seeing Neil live back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, I saw him. He was doing a tour where he was playing kind of hand-picked venues, and this was like around 2000 and I don't know, maybe 10 years ago,
right?
Maybe a little more. And he played this sort of venue in the Bronx, and it was like it was like a theater, smallish theater.
Right.
I think he did a few nights there, and it was just amazing. It was with like a smaller band.
Right.
And it was like just like it was a band, but then he played solo. So it was like a kind of hybrid set. And it was before Bill Keep died.
Oh, okay.
So I got to see him. It was like kind of right. He was around, or Ben Key, sorry.
Yeah.
He was around. He played with them.
Right.
And I think, it's Ralph Molina. I don't think it was Billy Talbot playing bass. But it was kind of like a hybrid there of Crazy Horse.
Yeah, I think that time that's
amazing.
Yeah, around that time he was playing with something maybe called like his electric band. But it was, I mean, I feel like that period was interesting because it was like the band could almost do everything that, they could do. Yeah. They could do the Crazy Horse thing, but they could also do, a more mellow situation, maybe a little more refined stuff. That was a good era. But yeah, Ben,
it was
with that,
right.
No, I mean, it's awesome that it's still something that I saw him last year with Crazy Horse, and, it was a like semi-chaotic show, but it was like fully, it was beautiful. It was like that sound ringing out and them just kind of kind of going for it. It feels very like, I mean, this is the word that we've come back to, but I mean, even with Crazy Horse playing like this fairly large kind of theater arena kind of setting, it felt very vulnerable compared to maybe other types of bands that would be playing that. Sort of emotionally dangerous almost, which is great. Like that's exciting for that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's always fun to see him, and yeah, he's there's nobody quite like it. So it's good that he's got another tour coming. I get terrified of these guys getting so old. But he seems like he's hitting 80 this year, I think. So
I saw him another time. My other favorite time was when I saw Crazy Horse. I went and saw him in a basketball arena in Philly, and I bought one of those tickets. He does those floor tickets.
Oh yeah.
It's not, and so I just kind of got, I got the extra, but paid the extra $25 or however much it was at the time. And I got there early, and I was like right up front, and Patti Smith opened.
Oh, okay. I saw that tour as well. Yeah, I saw her on that tour.
That was really just an incredible feel to see Patti and see in America. And that was the first time I had seen Crazy Horse. So it was like,
yeah, I think that was
full.
I think that was the same for me. That was when they sort of went full kind of
Got back.
Yeah, like elemental kind of sounds where it was just sort of long one chord jams a lot of the time too.
Yeah, totally.
So
they were like in like amazing form.
I'm Jason P. Woodbury, and this is All One Song, a Neil Young podcast. Your host is Tyler Wilcox, and I'm the show's producer. Our audio is edited by myself and Andrew Horton. Our show's imagery is by Ian Everett. Music by Coca Leaves and Pearls, featuring Chris Forsyth. Executive producer Justin Gage. For more podcasts, radio shows, interviews, reviews, and much more, visit Aquarium Drunkard. And subscribe so you can support independent music media. Special thanks to Qobuz, our sponsors. I've got an account, and I've got to say, music sounds great over there, and they've got some really good, keen editorial stuff too. I really dig it. This show is part of the Talkhouse Podcast Network. Tyler will be back next week with our own composer, Chris Forsyth of Solar Motel and Coca Leaves and Pearls. We will speak with you more then.